Hello, my front-end friends, and welcome to my podcast, Journal Musings. My name is Kevin, and in this podcast, I talk about whatever is front of mind for me in any given week, usually in some way that's related to front-end development. But this week, I'm really excited because it's not just me here to talk about front-end development, and probably more specifically CSS, but I'm joined by none other than Andy Bell. Andy, thank you so much for coming to join me today.
No worries. Thanks for inviting me on. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, I always enjoy having conversations with you. For those listening who don't know Andy, he's someone who shares, I think, my love for CSS and also helping teach people about it and try and make people enjoy it a little bit more and get past their frustrations with it. And I've learned a ton over the years from Andy, so I always enjoy sitting down to talk with him.
Oh, ditto with you. It's nice this time that you're not whooping me on CSS battle as well. So.
Yeah, that was fun. We'll have to have a rematch once you have a bit more practice with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna dedicate weeks to practicing, and then I'm gonna challenge you again.
Yeah. So one of the reasons I was looking forward to this call is because I do like talking to people about web development and everything, but it's not so many people that enjoy CSS as much as we do and talking about it because it is, within, I guess, web development, it's a bit of a niche topic, and then CSS is the niche within that. But it does make me curious because there's obviously a lot of people out there who don't particularly love CSS, and I'm curious what it is about it that you enjoy or why you like it.
I think so I'm a designer that turned into a front-end developer. So I only started writing CSS because people didn't build my PSDs properly. So I was like, I'm just going to learn it myself and do it myself. I think that's the thing for me is it's just the power that it gives you, the visual power to whatever you can imagine, especially now. It's you can do it with CSS, you can manipulate things, you can lay things out exactly how you want them to be laid out, and it's just always been, even in the old hacky days, it's always been a huge pull to me to be able to bring things to life, which no other front-end language gives you the opportunity to do. So yeah, it's always been a thing for me with CSS. Make things look great, and that's why I love it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you come from the design background. I have a bit of one as well, and I think that's sort of why I got into it too. But obviously you get, if you're used to having your perfect PSD mockup, and then trying to make it come to life, did you go, because I know now you're not the pixel perfection type of person.
No, slightly, yeah.
Yeah. Was there an evolution away from that? Or, at the beginning, was it like, this needs to be exactly this position? Yeah.
I think his responsive design was the big sort of changing moment for me, but it was working on really complicated stuff too. I used to be a product designer on a really high complexity medical app, and I think that was the context that really opened my eyes to, if you try and make everything pixel perfect, you're in a world of hell. So that's when I started exploring how can you get away from that? And it was shifting my entire mindset from the source of truth isn't the sketch file as it was in those days. It is the browser that is the source of truth, and the sketch file is it's like a hint at what you might want, and then the design work happens in the browser. So the creative work happens in Sketch or Figma, and then the real design work happens when you get in the browser, and that. The result of that was everything was more solid. So from that moment on, it was just the only way I'd like to work. So when it works well.
Yeah. So I do have a question to follow up on that then, because I get a lot of emails or DMs and other things, because in my videos too, I always mention, if I'm doing, say, a design from Figma or something like that, I always say it's our guideline. It's sort of that's what it's giving you an idea of the direction you want to go in, but it's not the finished product. And I always get people coming and saying, well, my boss is asking me for pixel perfection, or I had an email recently from someone who they were asking me is this a North American thing? Because they were in Russia and they're just like, here everything has to be pixel perfect. And I guess, there is that. I think in a lot of places, you don't have the communication, I guess, back and forth sometimes isn't so straightforward. But is there anything for people, I guess, that are in that situation? Is there any advice that you have for them to maybe make it a little bit easier to soften that a little bit?
Yeah, there's an education process. Like a lot of this is a carryover from the olden days of web design, but before that, print design. So, like in print design, the only way it's not pixel perfect is if you mess up your art direction for print, right? So, like what you design in InDesign or whatnot, and what you send to the printers comes back looking exactly like you expect it to come back, even to the point where we use Pantone colors to do things so like it is exact. And then the early era of web design, like naturally it sort of evolved from print design. So there was that expectation that everything needs to be pixel perfect, which was fine because you had two resolutions to work with. You had like 800 by 600 and 1024 by 768. So again, it was fine. But now you have no idea what viewport anyone's got. So like to achieve pixel perfection, you've got to introduce fragility into your front end, which would work really well with viewports of very specific sizes. But as soon as you start to get anything in the in-between sizes, it gets really difficult. Like we made this site called viewports.fyi a couple of years ago, and we ran an experiment, 48-hour experiment, and we got, I think it was over 100,000 data points. And the highest percentage was less than 10% of a viewport. I think it's less than 5%. I can't remember now. And it demonstrated really well. Like you have no idea. So to work to a rigid viewport spec and a rigid pixel perfection spec, you're actually excluding a good experience for a lot of users. So I think a big part of it is like educating the people above you and your colleagues on that, and then coming through with a solution that works as an alternative. So, coming through with flexible layouts and educating people that like designers on how they work. I think tools like Figma are a bit more helpful now with their layout systems, but it's all about like educating and communicating with each other, and then rather than turning it into a battle, it's never a battle, and you find that it'll be a slowish process, but you can work people over projects and over time to the point where you're all singing off that same hymn sheet, where Figma does become a guide rather than a ratified law, which it often is. And I feel for people in those situations because it is very common. So
yeah, I think I think for some people it is, or maybe they feel they're not in like that position to be able to like question things. And it's like I don't think my advice is usually like, don't make it don't question things, make it collaborative as much as possible. Like if you can make it the designer's idea that this is how it's going to work, then they're going to be on board with it. Not always easy, and I know some companies have a really good setup where things do go back and forth a lot, and then other ones it's just so siloed that you might not have that opportunity. But
you might not have direct contact with the designers, which there's not much I can really offer to help in that situation because you are really in a PSD to HTML context. But like if you do have contact with the designer, it's all about how you frame feedback too. So it's all about, so say for example they design something and it can't be built without introducing fragility, then a good idea is to create a quick prototype and then talk to them about it and use that as a mechanism of discussion. Say, look, resize this code pen, resize it, and you can see where the fragility is and you can see where it's problematic, and then come forward with a solution. I'm not saying come forward with a visual solution, but say if this piece of content was in this source order like this, and it was displayed in this order, then we'd have a much easier time working with it. Like designers are really flexible people, so if you give them what is the problem, and you actually tell them what the problem is and give them detail on it and like a possible solution, the designer will almost certainly be like, yeah, I can rework this. And that's what we're paid to do at the end of the day. It's like paid problem solvers that make the solution look pretty is essentially what a designer is. So it's all about how you communicate and feedback loops and being collaborators rather than, enemies, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So,
So I am curious about, because I know you have your own studio now, a set studio.
Yeah.
What type of workflow do you guys have set up?
So we've been working on this for a couple of years now. We've been chopping and changing, and we finally landed on a workflow. So it starts in discovery, which has always been the case, like a really deep research and what I like to call the interrogation phase of the project, where the client feels like a criminal because we're just peppering them with questions and we're gathering all this information and we're coming up with information architecture, wireframes or priority guides, whatever's relevant. Then we move on to creative ideation, which is all Figma, all creative, and it's just pushing the boundaries as far as you possibly can with no regard of how it's going to be built. So it's like unleashing our creatives and saying, look, design exactly how we want it to be. And then we then move into like a prototyping phase where we then test these ideas in like low fidelity prototypes. And then after all of that, during that, the designer's refining the Figma comps to, based on the feedback. So that's where we do that sort of circular loop. And then by the end of that, we've got a Figma guide that is relevant to an actual build, and then we do like sketching up and backlog planning and build, and it works well because you get all the hard bits out of the way early on, and then developers can then focus on writing really resilient code then, rather than I don't know how I'm going to build this because they've already prototyped it, so they know how they're going to build it.
Yeah.
And the end result, worked quite well. Yeah, so the client never sees a Figma ever in the project. They'll see a loom maybe that sort of references a Figma and shows a prototype version of that, but the tangible thing they get is in the browser. So which is really important because then their source of truth is the browser too, and that's a really important position to be in.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Do you ever have anybody? I mean, it depends, I guess, on the client's past experience. Like, have there been some that really feel like they're missing something along the way there, or is it just for them that's what they're getting and they're happy because they're seeing stuff like the progress being made and the design direction and everything?
It's a good question. No, we haven't had anyone who thinks they're missing out. We have like messed up before. We have let clients into the Figma, which was a nightmare, a disaster. So that was why we had this like strict rule. But the updates are so frequent, and there's like constant like stream of communications that they don't really feel like they're missing out. The main thing that we do, like a lot of agencies don't do, is like we take complete control of the project as well. So like we put ourselves in a position of this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it, unless you fundamentally disagree, rather than asking permission. So we're not saying, can we get sign off on this? Can we get sign off on that? It's like, this is what it is. And if you really don't like it, tell us. But otherwise, we're going to carry on. And and the clients love that because like they don't have time to do their day job and a design project that's like out of scope from what they do. So really, it's like an FYI situation rather than you're blocking progress because you're not signing this off. It's like, no, we're going to keep trucking on. It's like building that trust with the client so that they trust that we're making the right decisions for them, which is true because we're the actual pros. So like we should. It's like a builder. You wouldn't get a builder in and start telling them how to lay bricks, would you? So it's like you let them do their job, and so we get them to let us do our job, and it works. Yeah, it works really well.
Awesome, that's cool. It does make me wonder: do you vet the clients ahead of time before taking on things? Just because you always hear of like. There's already so many horror stories, but I could see some people not being down for that type, just letting you.
There's a long sales process to it, and it's if you thought the discovery was interrogating the sales processes, and I'm always like, I spend a lot of time talking to clients before I even let them anywhere near the studio, and like they won't realize that I'm doing vetting questions, but I'm asking specific questions to try and work out, like size them up, work them out. I'll create a bit of a problem for them, like to try and enable not an argument, but like a disagreement. To see how they respond to that disagreement and before we even talk about like when the project's starting, how much it's going to cost, etc. It's like we try and work out, size them up, and then if they don't pass that phase, then I'd often just pass them on to someone else. Because like you just know, you can smell red flags. I've done this for a long time. You can smell red flags on a client pretty easily, and if there's one or more red flags, it's not happening, because we're not going to be the right type of agency for them. It's like the clients that want ultimate control, like they're better off going to work for a different agency than us. So we're just upfront about that.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. And yeah, I think it's one of those things for people that are looking at starting that can be really hard, because you don't want to turn down work.
That's the thing, right? When you start, like if you're like watching this now and you're thinking, I want to start as a freelancer or an agency, you're going to have to take on clients that are bad news. It's just part of it, but the benefit of that is it'll make you so much better at managing clients. Like you have to go through a bit of hell to like experience certain situations, and then okay, I know what to look for next time, so I'm going to try and avoid that. Help you work out your own process. So there's a little bit of pain to it, but over time you start to get a really good like knack of dealing with all different types of people by doing client services.
Yeah. All of that sounds like a fair amount of work for you.
Yeah.
And I am actually kind of curious, because obviously I found out about you and everything you were doing because you were teaching some CSS stuff, and on your blog, and you always had good articles, and then there was every layout that you did with Hayden, and I know then at one point you took a bit of a hiatus away from teaching things, or sort of the public facing things anyway. And I wasn't expecting, I knew you were busy with other stuff. I wasn't expecting you to resurface into the educational side. And I'm just curious, I guess, with the studio going on and everything you have with that, why you decided to reemerge, relaunch Piccalilli and the other things you're up to now.
I think so. The hiatus was a purely time related problem. So I was a freelancer, and then I evolved that into the studio, and those first 2 years of the studio was just an unbearable amount of work. And we had to do so much work to sort of like generate a nice buffer and get everything in good shape. So like I just didn't have time. I didn't have time to even I was so out of date with everything that was going on the web, because I was just so tunnel visioned on that one thing. But then towards the end of 2023, like everything was smoothed out and everything was working quite well. And, internally we wanted to carry on doing blogs and stuff, and I was like, why don't we bring Piccalilli back to life? And then we, as the studio, we completely rebranded it, redesigned it, and put a hell of a lot of effort into what it is now. And now it's like a proper publisher, and it's so glad for it too, because I definitely felt like I was missing something. I did the Google Learn CSS course in the interim, and I was like, I need to write in my voice again. Like I need to do what I like to write again. So sort of created the environment to do that, and the rest is history, I guess. And we keep trucking along with it. It seems to be going down quite well, which is great.
Yeah, I think it's been awesome seeing the relaunch of it, and there's been a lot of good stuff. And also like the other authors and other stuff you're bringing in there too. It's nice to sort of have a range of voices, but the quality
still got an empty draft for you, Kev.
Yes, I know. It's I've been thinking about it a lot. I need to find the time to actually work on it.
It'll be there waiting for you when you're ready. I can't wait to get you on there. But that's something I'm going to actively do more now. Is I was trying to work out a process, an editorial process, because I used to write CSS tricks back in the day, and I loved Chris's process, which was you write however you want to write, and then when you're ready, just give me a shout, and then we'll sort of refine it and make it work. And I do a very similar one where I get authors to write exactly how they want to write, and then I run through their article, and I'll find details in there. I'll be like, I didn't understand this bit, so do you want to just expand on it a little bit? And sort of help them mold it while retaining their voice, like mold it into something that's just a little bit more like malleable and detail rich. And then we publish it in your own voice. So every author on the site, if you're American, it's in American English because we use the HTML language attribute to set that up. Like, we don't make anyone do anything that they don't like to do. It's like you are you, and this is your voice. So that's what you get published as on Piccalilli, and it seems to work really well. All the popular articles are from other authors too, not even mine. So it's working out really well.
I guess I am curious. I know you said you sort of had that something you wanted to do, or you wanted to talk again in your own voice in that. But just like, what is it about, I guess, writing the articles and teaching and all of that? Like, is there something specific that draws you to it, or is it just you enjoy it and that's it?
I don't know. I feel like I've always had this feeling where, like, I feel like I've got to pay back to the industry. Like, when I came in, people were giving out so much stuff for free, and like, there was so many articles published. Like, people that are still in the industry now, like, I remember I came in as a designer, so I didn't understand all the technical jargon. I didn't understand the sort of like academic style writing that was prevalent in those days, and I had to scrape through school. Like, I was no way I was going to be able to understand any of that. And so when I found authors that wrote in a good voice, I always thought to myself, like, I need to do this one day to help the people behind me. Like, there's going to be people like me coming through who have come from a similar background, and I don't want them to feel like they're out of touch, or I don't want them to feel like they can't understand something. Like, it's just a different angle. It's why I like your videos too. Like, it's just a different angle, and it's easier to understand. So it might not be to everyone's taste, but that's the sort of main thing for me, is that it's going to help someone, and that's the main thing. So that's what drives me always. As long as one person gets some value out of it, then I've done my job, and if that's your mantra with writing, then you're always going to write really well. And if you always think, I couldn't find the answer to this on Google, but now I know the answer, I'm going to pay it back and I'm going to share how I did this. And someone will find it in the future and they'll thank you for it, either directly or just by enjoying your article. So yeah, I've always had that mantra, and I always will do too.
Yeah, that's cool, and when you were talking about scraping through the technical articles, when I first was trying to learn JavaScript, the amount of foobar and fizzbuzz stuff that I was looking at, and was like, what are they talking about? I don't understand any of this.
I could not get a job in a big tech company. I've never get through the interview phase.
Not doing those whiteboard interviews.
Not a chance I'd get through that phase. But it's very interesting, like how so many people come from that similar background. Like, everyone, I presume, thinks that like people that work in tech are like, computer science graduates, but so many of the great people in our industry are the opposite of that, and I think that's really good. That's what I love about it. It shouldn't be gatekept like that, should it?
It's the diversity of the backgrounds and the different viewpoints that people come in with is really good. So obviously with Piccalilli being around and relaunched, you also sort of step things up with your course, Complete CSS. Since I struggle with making courses a little bit, and when I saw even like the name, when I saw the name Complete CSS, because I have trouble with like scope creep and everything else like that. And I was like, oh my goodness, that's an undertaking.
It was a hell of an undertaking, and it's not like Estelle and Eric's the book that they've got, the one that's like that fat. I did a course like that before, where the one on web dev, and it was basically like fancy documentation. And I always wanted, so like back in the old days, I had this idea of CSS from scratch. Like, that was my idea from a course. And like, it was 3 parts. It was like, here's the basics of CSS. Here's a like how to communicate, how to plan, how to actually build things in a good way, and then here's how to build a really good thing. So I did the first part with Google. I thought that pretty much covered what the first section would be, and then I thought, well, I've still yet to do the second two parts, and I'd just about gotten over writing that other course, so I was like, I think I'm ready to go again. And then that was what the whole focus of that course was. Like, I don't think people realize how important soft skills are in writing good CSS. So I just focused really heavily on that. It's like me and Jason, the designer at the studio, we created this environment, like, and we designed the context for the course as if we were two people that never worked with each other before. And we created all these scenarios and problems that would come up, and then we worked out, like, how would we deal with this in the studio as like two colleagues that work together a lot. Pardon me. And so we just created all these scenarios of like, right, I can teach people now. Like, I can teach people this is how to deliver feedback, and this is how to deal with problems that come up, and this is how to communicate effectively with a designer, and this is how to like refine a design concept with a designer rather than just building things verbatim. And the end result is like a really nice website that you build, and like pattern library and component systems. So like I go through all the architecture that goes with that. So it's like there's a theory aspect to the course, but it's a very practical course as well. And the idea is by doing that, you're going to be in a much stronger position to like progress in your career, because you'll learn so much of like what's important in being like a senior level developer, which isn't being good at code, it's actually being good at communicating and organizing. And then with that you learn some CSS, or a lot of CSS, but in like in an architectural sense, and like how to be defensive and how to build things that scale efficiently and stuff like that. So I had it all. It was burning a hole in my pocket, and I was like, I just need to get this out. So I pinched my nose and got on with it last year, and goddamn, it was a lot of work. But it's like 80,000 words, I think, is the total word count by the end of it. Yeah, it's a big one. But the real reason we did it was we wanted to do this course system on Piccalilli. So it was like, we'll use me as a sort of testing subject.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And evolve it.
Yeah. I found it really interesting that you did decide to take that approach of making it more, or not more, but having that, like, the collaborative side part of it, and not just like, here's how you write CSS to make a pretty looking page. Like, there was that extra dimension to it that I haven't seen in any courses that I can think of, like not just CSS related, but just like dealing with that, as you said, the soft skill side of things. So was that like part of it from the very beginning? Like, this has to be included. That was the goal, or did that sort of evolve into it as you were going through?
No, that was the when I first started sketching out the ideas for the course. It's like the sort of focal point of the entire course is soft skills, and their importance in CSS. Because like, I've been doing this for forever, and so I used to do like CSS consultancy as well, and like thinking back to all the projects I did there, the ones that went wrong had very little soft skills in them, and the ones that went really well, a lot of the work was me actually like working with clients and doing all of this like planning work and communication work, and then like a small percentage of the project was me actually authoring CSS for them. It was a lot of like pre-work and then delivering it. I was like, that's always been successful for me, and it's about time I taught people that. And like you said, soft skills are just so like underrepresented in this industry, and it's such a crucial skill like to learn. You can get it from books like Sarah Drasner's book, the management book, covers it really well. But unless, like, a lot of people probably don't want to become a manager, and rightly so, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't learn the soft skills that are required to do that job, because it will make you a better developer. There's no like maybe about it. You will be a better developer by improving your soft skills, and just a better colleague as well. So yeah, it works for everyone.
Yeah. I guess now, with that one done, you've just recently announced there's 2 more courses that are coming out with Piccalilli of JavaScript for Everyone and Mindful Design, I believe are the titles of them. Are they before I guess we'll talk more about what each one of them is, but I'm curious, is there any sort of that aspect in those two, or are they more focused on JavaScript and design?
So both authors, Matt's doing Matt Mackey's doing the JavaScript one, and Scott Riley's doing the design one. Both of them have very similar ways of working than I do. So there will be, for sure, elements of that. Matt's is going to be a very quite technical course, but I don't know if you haven't read Matt's work before, you need to read Matt's work, because he is like a master at turning technical concepts into something that's really sort of easy to understand. And he's also he's a really funny writer as well. Like, his writing's so funny, like you'll find yourself laughing throughout the course, because he doesn't do it deliberately, but it's just his mannerisms and the way that he writes is just so humorous in his analogies. So if you're struggling with JavaScript, like when Matt's course comes out, that struggle will be over, because he's so good at explaining the hard things and making you understand them. So that I was really, really wanted to get him to do a course, because like we've known each other for years, and I always thought like Matt needs to do a proper JavaScript course. Like, so I was straight on that one. And then Scott, he comes at it from a very soft skills, like the design course, be very soft skill orientated, because that's what design is. Even if you consider yourself to be a UI designer, there has to be lots of skills before you even start making rectangles look nice in Figma. So he's teaching people like how the brain works, right? How people work, like how people's behaviors work, and how to not to exploit that, which a lot of designers do with dark patterns, but just to like improve people's lives with your design work. And he's got a very practical course as well, so it's going to be going through a whole design project and setting you up to do projects really well in the future as well. So I'm really excited about that one. And that was a video course as well, which is also exciting. Yeah. So
yeah, I guess that does go better with design. When
you couldn't write that one, you couldn't. I mean, he's written a book called Mindful Design, and like when we were chatting about it, I was like, the thing I regret the most is I didn't do this as videos. I was like, we'll do it as videos then. Yeah, we'll make it happen. So yeah, and that's why we created this course platform on Piccalilli. Is like we want to give authors whatever tools they need to deliver the education that they want to deliver, like whether that's videos, writing, interactive demos, or whatever. Like, our job as the studio now is to support them with that infrastructure, so building all the different pieces that they need in order for their lessons to really make sense to people. So I'm excited to do that this time rather than what I was doing last time, which was being a husk of a person while I was writing several thousand words a day. It was not fun. It's very satisfying work, but I mean, you know what it's like when you're in the middle of a course. It is, really tests the old mental health.
Yeah, it does definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So my course is the last big course I'll ever do. I might do a little mini course in the future, but I'll never do a course that big ever again. Yeah. I don't think my partner will let me do another course that big again.
Never say never, but
yeah. We'll see.
So I mean, I guess that transitions a bit nicely to what the next part I wanted to ask you about was just between, I guess, managing the studio, having Piccalilli, creating a course, getting, working with other people collaboratively on other courses, when it just comes to like front end development in general, and I guess CSS more specifically. But one thing I get asked a lot is, how do I keep up with everything? And I'm really curious how you keep up with everything.
I am a very annoying person, Kevin. I'm a very organized person, and that's the key to everything for me. Like, I block my time out in a day. Like, if I let people pull my strings, I'd never get anything done. So like, I'm very lucky in the studio. Like, the people that work in the studio are just ridiculously good at what they do. And there's times where I'm very busy in the studio, like early projects, but generally, like, I don't really do any production work for the agency. Like, it's very rare. A project we're working on now, I'm actually doing a 2-week sprint, which is the first one for a long time where I'm actually getting really deep into some CSS. But generally, I don't really do anything. So once the project is running nicely and we've got it all going, like I tend to dip out, and that's where my feed bin is just full of stuff. And I'm just a very fast reader, so I just like skim through things until I find something that I like. I'll watch all the videos, listen to podcasts and stuff, and then a good way of doing that is like I run the newsletter at Piccalilli, so it's like it forces me to stay up to date with things as well. So I do a lot of reading. So yeah, it's like managing your own time and not letting people manage your time for you as well. I think this is one bit of advice to give to anyone who works in client services is if a client says it's an emergency, unless something's on fire, it's not an emergency. Like manage their expectations. So like I'll often like DM from a client in Slack and I'll be like, I see the problem, we'll get onto it, but I'll get back to you. And it's like maintaining that relationship. I think if you let people like I say, like use your time, you'll never get anything done. So it is doing things in dips and flows, and then just being proactive, I guess. But it's tiring also. So I'm never as up to date as I want to be, that's for sure. And like I see all this cool stuff like those CSS carousels recently. I was like, I really want to deep dive into them, and then I don't really have time for that right now. But luckily, you made a good video, so yeah, that's what kept me up to date on it. Yeah,
that's one advantage I've found lately, especially considering there's so much going on, is if I start making a code pen on something, I'm like, I should just record this and that can be a piece of content. So this is literally my job right now.
That's it. I mean, that would be the dream for me, is that I just do that for the job. But there's a benefit in running the agency as well, because it keeps us like our whole mantra at Piccalilli is like, it's front end education for the real world, right? And we couldn't do that unless we were doing real world projects. And a lot of the content I write, if you like look at like the last couple of years of articles, there's a link to a client project in all of them, as in not explicitly, but the vast majority of the time it's something we've done for a client that I've then sort of white labeled, I guess, and then turned into a piece of content. And it's like there's no more real world than that. And I think if I didn't do that, like real world work, I think I'd find myself sort of becoming a demoware merchant, and I don't think we need another one of them. So yeah, there's a benefit to the stress, I think. That's what I keep telling myself anyway. That's what keeps me straight here. But the benefit of Piccalilli is now is we can be really selective about clients, and that is really valuable. So yeah, I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, and I definitely that's one thing for me of like trying to balance, like finding time to work on real projects, just so it's not all just like these little demos that are fun to build, and making sure, as much as I want to be like, here's this cool feature, but it's like, why does it even matter if I don't know how to use it in like a real context? I think that's such an important thing, especially with CSS. And it's also why it's hard sometimes. Like the carousel one was fun to play with, but I'm always trying to find a bit of a balance, because like that's great, but nobody can actually use that for the next probably 3 years in production. So it's like, like it's fun to talk about some of these things, but there's finding that balancing act of like, what's actually useful for people at the same time.
Yeah, I've got a list item in my articles to write list, which is CSS carousels progressive enhancement ? Which I think is the right way to approach it. Leave me to simmer on that one. I'll find a way of turning the every layout reel into a carousel.
I think that from what I've heard, the version 2 of the spec might be better, and I don't know what the timeline is for that one at all, because version 1's not there yet. But at least that one you'll be able to link in like actual buttons, and it's not all generated content. That's
the big problem I've got. I refuse to use an icon font, and I've seen the problems with icon fonts, but I'm also not running into it as well, because we had this with container queries, if you remember, where everything changed, and then I had to go back and like update loads of content, and so I'm just going to wait for version 2, and then it's more relevant for people then.
With sort of, I guess, all the new stuff that's coming, we have carousels. You mentioned there's mixins and functions are getting added now. We had nesting, we had container queries. It just seems to be like and right now, like I think what was the other one too? There was, I don't know. There's progress on like if statements. I don't know. There's so much that sort of either just happened or is in the progress of happening or is right around, at least being talked about. I'm curious what you think about what seems to be. I think we started probably around the same time taking it a bit more seriously when it was much slower paced. Like features just didn't come out like this. I'm curious what you think about like the speed that these things are coming out at.
So that I think the speed's fine. I think what's not fine is that I think people think that they have to know all this stuff, and you don't. Like I think the magic of CSS. Like you asked earlier, like what I really like about it. What I probably should have said is that CSS written 20 years ago still works now. That's the magic of CSS. Like, so the point I'm trying to make with that is like we've got all these new features which are fantastic, but you don't have to use them unless you've got a use for them. Like right at the end of the course, there's a section, the wrapping up lesson, where it's like, why didn't you use this tool and why didn't you use that tool? And it's the point I'm making there is all of these tools are really useful and all these new capabilities are really useful, but unless there's a need for it, you don't have to necessarily learn it, or you don't need to use it. So like, don't force layers in unless you need to use layers, and don't force nesting in unless you need to use nesting, and et cetera, et cetera. It's like, try not to like use a feature because it's cool and new. Try to be more pragmatic about what features you want to use. So like the carousel is a really good example, and like we both just touched on, like it's not ready yet and it's not going to be ready for a long time, so take a keen interest in it for sure, but like don't start planning your workflow around it, because until you actually need to use it, then learn it deeply. And I've got that with like mixes. Like I've not used Sass for years now, and I've sort of learned to work without mixins. So I wouldn't say I'm overly enthusiastic about mixins, but when they do come around, like unless you have a real need for them, then don't feel like you have to use them. So what really matters with CSS is understanding the cascade and specificity, and understanding how the browser works. And then you can work with CSS however you need to work with it, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I 100% agree. People have often asked me, is CSS getting too complicated now? And I'm like, it's no, or too complex. Or
it's already complicated, yeah.
And I'm like, it's not more. It's just like, a little bit the same what you said. Like, somebody who's learning it now you don't need to. There's the breadth of what you need to learn is much bigger, but if you get that foundation, that's the same foundation that somebody would have learned a long time ago. That's what you're going to build on top of. And I think that, now when I see these new things come out, I can sort of figure out how they work relatively quickly because you understand the foundations of what they're all being built on top of. And you just need that deep knowledge of the foundation, the foundational stuff. And then you'll be okay.
Yeah, and browsers work now as well. So like you don't have all that baggage that we've got, like the crap that we went through. Like it's like now you use Flexbox and it works, and so I envy people that are coming into CSS now. Like imagine like learning layout with an actual layout system rather than hacking it together with something that's not designed for it. And so I imagine like coming to CSS now, you look at all the things it can do and it probably is quite intimidating, but my advice to those people is stick to the basics. And it's like, I'm a big football fan, soccer for people in America, but yeah. And like the difference between a professional footballer and an amateur footballer is that the professional footballer does the basics perfect every single time. Like that is what makes them a professional. And it's the same with any professional athlete. So think of it like that with your CSS. Like if you get the basics and you get the basics rock solid, like you can navigate almost any problem in CSS because you've got that fundamental understanding of how the CSS works. And I'd say that like if you want to really put time into learning CSS, is focus on that. And then no matter what features come out, because you understand how CSS works, you understand how the browser works, you'll be able to navigate those features more efficiently than you probably can now.
Yeah. That's with the browser support thing, or just how browsers used to not work. Every year I do a poll of my audience on sort of their biggest, or different things. One of the question is their biggest complaint about CSS, and browser support's always one of like the top ones. And I think it's they're saying it, I'm pretty sure, in terms of like there's these new features I'd like to use and I can't
use
yet.
them yet.
Yeah. Because anytime I see browser support, that just means they don't work the same wherever I use it. That's how I see browser support issues coming up. Yeah, and I'm like, you don't know what browser support problems actually mean anymore.
No, you didn't have to put an IE class in your HTML element. Like if you know how to do that, you're in a good position. It is funny, isn't it? But even with like new features, like progressive enhancement is like if you get into progressive enhancement, your stress levels will dip considerably. Like trying to force a browser to do something that it doesn't support yet you're only going to end in pain. Whereas if you like build up progressively and work like that, it doesn't matter if a browser doesn't support a feature, because that baseline experience is key. Like I did that article recently by using the Share API, and I think it still doesn't work in Firefox, does it? And it doesn't matter, because like the way we built it determines the support in advance, and if neither clipboard or Share API is available, then it renders the URL as a string on the page. Like that's your minimum viable experience. And if you build like that, it doesn't matter if you use the greatest, latest things, because eventually browsers will catch up, and then suddenly it'll work. And that's the important thing. And the most important thing is that the user at that time gets the right experience for them, rather than like a half-baked experience that wasn't tested for.
So I think I've already taken a lot of your time, so I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do we're talking about CSS, so I have 5 rapid fire questions that I like to ask all of my guests. And they're ones I tend to get asked a lot and I never have a good answer for, so I'm seeing if I can get you
putting the pressure on now.
But I'll start with a really easy one. This one I do have an answer for. What's your favorite unit?
CH unit.
Awesome. Perfect.
It's 1-0 character, but your audience already knows that going.
And if you don't, then look it up.
Now you do.
Great. Is there a thing in CSS that annoys you the most, or that you wish was different?
Oh, that's a good question. In fact, I was complaining about this today. When there's the obvious one, there's the weird keyword names, like there's the now wrap or no wrap. I don't like that stuff, but grid area property should support quotes. Like you define your grid areas with quotes, you should be able to then assign a grid area with quotes also. Like that's silly. You can't do that.
I've definitely been stuck there going, why isn't this working?
So many hours of my life have been wasted on that.
With all the new things that are coming to CSS now, do you have a favorite one, or something that you're like, oh, finally we have that?
The new stuff, text box trim, 100%. As a designer, that has been a pain point for years for me, and lots of hacks, and I'm using it immediately. I'm already using it in production now, because it's like, it's not fully supported yet, but it doesn't matter. It's a progressive enhancement, and the people that get it are going to have some tight typography as a result, and alignment. I love that. Such a good feature.
Yeah, that one was a long time coming too. Like they just kept talking about it. There was that Medium article that was written probably like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe longer, and it was just like, is it going to happen? Is it going? And then finally, is there a CSS best practice that you disagree with? Well, best practice in quotation marks. It's
interesting question. That is a best practice in air quotes I disagree with. A lot of people's ideals on layout I don't agree with. I think I'm a bit of a black sheep on that, where like I very rarely reach for grid, and I very, very frequently use flexbox. But I think it's an attitude towards layout that's not quite mainstream. But I think let the browser do more work than you think you need to let it do, and you'll be in a better position. Whereas grid to me always feels very specific and very rigid, which is supposed to be. That's what it's designed to do. Like that's why they designed grid was for editorial layouts and stuff. So it's like I think some of the decision making that happens in the open, I think, might be slightly misleading about how to do the best job. But that's why we all write in it. We all give our opinions and things. So yeah, I certainly do that.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the grid first camp, but I do agree with you in letting the browser or trying to let the browser make as much decision making as possible. So it's definitely a little bit of like a mix there. Part of it might also come because for the most part, my audience is more beginner friendly. And so like, it's a lot easier to get like what they want. If you're just saying like, use grid, it's going to give you the sizes and throw the media query in there. Whereas trying to explain how to make an intrinsic breakpoint happen with a flexbox pushing the limits gets a little bit more complicated. Yeah,
I definitely agree with that for sure. I think grid is like, if you're in a pixel perfection situation, which a lot of people are, grid is very helpful for that. Yeah.
And my last question, is there a feature that you think is missing in CSS right now?
That's a good question. I'll tell you what isn't missing and what we don't need is masonry layout. But I think one thing that I think CSS would make CSS really, really, really good is native widow and orphan removal. So text wrap balance and text wrap pretty are really good. But like, I come from a traditional design background and worked with creative directors that used to yell at you if there was often like a single word at the bottom of the paragraph and like typographic rivet. I know Jen Simmons and co are doing lots of work on that in Safari, but like more not necessarily rigid, but more typography control, I think would transform web design in a way that you don't even realize how powerful it would be in terms of like competing with app design.
Right. Yeah.
I know we've got view transition stuff, but like what makes apps look more polished than web is a lot of the time is the typography is under extreme control, which it does need to be. So that for me, like more typography tools in CSS, I think will really sort of elevate the standard of design on the web for sure.
Yeah,
and probably bring more designers into it as well.
Yeah,
which is a good thing. It's a really good thing.
All the H and J controls in InDesign, I missed some of what we could do in there.
That's it. It's so imperative. Like with all of these new things that are coming out, like I cannot wait to implement them on Piccalilli. Like that's something that's so important to me is reading experience, and like it's still frustrating. It's still not right. Like I want to be able to control everything about the typography, but we'll get there. I feel like we're in a good place with how it's evolving. So waiting and hoping.
Awesome. I definitely agree with that. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for your time and for joining me today.
Thank you.
I know we've talked about you have a lot of stuff going on, and you seem to always have like this extra new website that I didn't know about. Like you had the viewports.fyi, and then there's always another one that has like your specific landing page to get a message across. But if people do want to follow you and they're not already, what's the best place or places to keep up with everything you're doing?
So my website, bell.bz, that's got a links page on it that sends you everywhere. Social media wise, I tend to just stay on Blue Sky now. Personally, Piccalilli's everywhere, but I don't like having multiple social networks to manage. So I've settled on Blue Sky. But that's the best place to find me really, and then go to Piccalilli and read some content.
Awesome. Yeah. And so, links to all of that will be in the show notes. And if anyone who's listening is interested in Andy's course, Complete CSS, he's been kind enough to give a coupon code of Kevin for 25% off. So definitely go check out the course and use that. It's a good course. I've done it. So I'd encourage you to go through it as well.
Thank you. Yeah, there's PPP discounts as well. So if you're coming in from overseas, you'll probably do better than 25% off as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
Nice one.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And that's it for this week. Yeah. Thanks again, Andy, for you being here, and thanks for everyone who's been listening. And until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.
Cheers, everyone. See ya.